Quick one, Iain, because we've got 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think the problem is the snobbish attitudes of the elite the new elite who run the media. While voicing democratic sentiments, they secretly despise the population at large and think they can't understand anything unless it's extraordinarily basic. And time and again, when sophisticated programs are actually made in the teeth of opposition, they are universally applauded, and there's, why can't we have more of this? And the thing is that we shouldn't have to choose between a 2.5-minute or a 15-minute soundbite when we've put, a lifetime's work into highly nuanced, complex things. It shouldn't be assumed that people can't understand them. And, all I would say is give the scientists and give anybody with ideas the chance, as they do in France and Germany, much more on the media, to talk at length about intellectual ideas.
Question from Valerie Ewell over there, and then I'll come to you, Susan.
Perhaps the first half of this session was directed at me, because I'm a disabled great granny, and you're all really worried about what I do. Well, what I do is I experiment, and you're free to do any experiments you like. I'm experimenting with appetite, for example. But also, I'm still carrying on my old ones, and one of them is something that you can all be interested in yourself, because it's about English spelling, which is the oldest technology there is. And all of you think that you can only be up with the communications technology, which is the most recent one. But the oldest one, English spelling, is dreadful, and you can't spell none of them. No, for 1 in 11.
This is saying spelling.
Can fill in by spelling test and win it.
And what's worse, Valerie, is that 4 million people in this country, in the workforce, are functionally illiterate.
Yes, but these people have got to learn that these functionally illiterate people make a difference to society, and they cost. It will cost more to keep our spelling than to change it. You way back in the dark ages talking about the old myths about spelling, but look at it carefully and you'll see that we can mend it like we do other languages, and think of all the money we'll save, and we put it into your research.
Thank you. We'll take that as a comment. Thank you. Should I go over there?
Yes, a beautiful lady.
You can run. The only disappointing thing about that is I discovered through Melvyn Bragg's program on Radio National that 4,000 years ago, the inventors of written language were accountants. It's true. You said so.
My name's Shelley Marr. Nadia, I've been the postdoc you talked about before who's applying for funding from the interdisciplinary research body generally. I'm not a scientist, I was in literature, so Valerie, I hope I can spell. I left academia for that reason, because to get funding for what I wanted to do, you had to gear it for what a committee thought was valuable. The problem is exactly what you described before. So then we have the situation you were talking about, Iain, where people decide to leave. I decided I'd rather generate the income to fund the sort of research I want to do.
Exactly.
As an individual, I think that's fine. You live in particular circumstances. I happen to quite enjoy thinking about business and how can I make money there. Some people have independent means. That's fine. As a society, I don't think that's fine. Because some people who have great ideas don't enjoy thinking about business. They don't enjoy talking to the media. And they don't have a private income. But they have great thoughts. And I wonder if you will comment on what we can do about this problem of funding the people who have excellent research ideas. And that's what they do.
How do you find the people with excellent research ideas? The question as I was going to put just then, what did Henry Sutton do in Ballarat in 1885? I mention this because Henry Sutton's centenary of his death was this year. Does anyone know what Henry Sutton did in Ballarat in 1885? Sorry? cloud, did you say?
Stump, jump.
No, it's not the stump jump plough. Henry Sutton invented television in Ballarat in 1885. He also had conversations with Graham Bell about the telephone, because he set up the first telephone system in this country. And he said to Graham Bell, why should that telephone be a box on the wall with a little cup you put to your ear? Why don't you have the speaker bit and the listening bit in one device? So he invented the handset. The list goes on. Why has no one heard of one of the greatest inventors in the history of the world, whose centenary is this year, and whose home is just down the road? Extraordinary. I'm going to broadcast this shortly, don't worry. It's not made up. I discussed it with Barry Jones, and he was in charge of getting a model of some of Henry Sutton's work, like the television, or the telephane as they call it, which was on the exhibition in Canberra, in Japan. Anyway, the question is, how do you get bright people like that linked into the system so that they can then form a critical mass with the bright innovators? How do you find them?
Well, you know, the telephone was invented by Philip Rice 2 years before Alexander Graham Bell invented it, and it was demonstrated all across Germany.
Yeah.
So inventors don't really get a fair shake in the way of history playing out.
Yeah.
The ones who end up making good business out of it get known for their
Thomas Edison, yeah.
get known for their
He was
accomplishments.
an operator.
So that doesn't mean that they're bad people. It's just that there's a difference between having a great idea and nobody knows it, and a great idea and your friends know it, and a great idea and the whole world knows it. There's a big difference about that. It's an effective translation of your insight into effect on millions or billions of people. So clearly, history is not really rewarding the first thought. It's rewarding the first impact, the big impact, right? But what I think that I would restate your question a little bit is how do you empower those people wherever they are? And I don't care if people keep going to Stanford or Harvard or wherever it is, that's fine. They know how to do that. I care about the people that don't even have, they live in a place with no books. They have no chance, and they're smarter than any of us, like way smarter than us, all of us together. People are smarter than that, who are behind a plow and have no idea what else to do. So I want to educate those people in some way to connect, already smart enough, I want to connect them with knowledge. So I think just empowering people where they are in situ may be even more important than finding good ones and hooking them up with the program that's going to ignore them, so to speak. I want to find the good ones, let them form an army.
Picking up on this lady's point, let's assume that we're in a society where we are empowered, where we're not behind a plough, but we have the potential. This reminds me of a really interesting story. Do you have a brand of smoothies here called Innocent? Are you familiar with that at all? No? Okay, well, in the UK, there's a brand of smoothie called Innocent, and I was talking to the founder of Innocent, and they had this brilliant idea of a new type of smoothie, right? Now, here's the moral of the story. What they did, they weren't brilliant at talking to the public, they weren't wildly anything special, but what they did, they just sent email after email to people they know saying, do you know any rich people, who could fund this? And they just sent endless emails out, and eventually just one, took it, and they're now, well, you've heard of them at least, and you've probably heard of them. Yeah. So in Europe, they're doing really, really well. Not as well as Google, but they were founded in the same year, but they're pretty good. So the whole idea is, whilst it would be nice if people came to you, if they said, we're a wonderful foundation, we've heard about you, and we want to give you masses of money, frankly, I think that's not going to happen any day soon. What you need, even if you're not a brilliant communicator, you need really to get on your bike, you need to network, talk to people, try every possibility, however remote. And the main thing that Churchill said once, never, ever, ever, ever give up.
Iain.
Yeah, but we're still really concentrating on why you need funds to do brilliant ideas. And I think Amazon was started on a family sitting around the table and chipping in a few savings. But far more importantly, I think Einstein, Gauguin and T.S. Eliot were all clerks at one stage. What's happened to the idea that you have a job and you use all that leisure time which you could be squandering on Google, actually doing something? So, we don't actually need to be funded for everything. I come back to the pencil and paper and sitting in the garden. And the lovely thing that Susan said earlier, which is about doing less, shutting up and being silent for long periods, I think is a terribly importantly creative thing to do. When I first went to America in 1992, the head of the lab was saying, the trouble here is we don't communicate enough. We don't communicate enough. And I said, well, I think the problem here is you communicate far too much. And that was in 1992. I mean, the same thing is logarithmically more true now.